Welcome back to 52 Weekends. I wanted to share our experience buying a used car from the rental car companies. We went and we tried all three of them, the big ones, Hertz, Avis, and Enterprise. We ended up buying from Enterprise, and I think it was definitely the right answer for us, the way we did it. I want to go through the process here, what we learned, what we didn't learn, what we would probably do differently next time, and why I think it really is probably the best way to do it for someone like us. Now keep in mind, this is our experience in January of 2026. We live in a small town in the Midwest. Our dealers don't have a lot of inventory, and they can kind of charge what they think they want to get away with. And if you want to pick the vehicle that's right for you and then go where there's enough inventory with the option content you're looking for, and you don't want to pay that new car premium, we got roughly a third off or a quarter off by buying a vehicle that had about 20,000 miles and was several months old. Now keep in mind, the new car dealers are struggling to get used car inventory as well. There's not as many company cars. Everybody's keeping them a lot longer. So anybody that gives you don't buy from a rental car company, a lot of the used vehicles on new car dealer lots are from rental car companies. I think we've all been through and studied a little bit that you find these flippers on Facebook Marketplace and local ad sales that they end up telling you, oh, it's not titled in my name, it's a relative and this and that, and then you pay for the Carfax. Always pay for the Carfax, and you find out it was totaled in a different state, even though the title in your state is clean. I had a situation where I almost spent over $30,000 on a pickup truck with a clean title, clean Carfax, but it was a Canadian transfer to the States, and when I searched the VIN, I got the pictures of it at the auction lot with the airbags blown out. So I really think the world we're in right now, you want to buy the newest, cleanest vehicle that you can afford of the type that you want and buy it in the right place. So the first thing to start with is don't get overwhelmed and be on a dealer lot looking at all kinds of different vehicles. Start by deciding what is the right vehicle for us. What is our budget? Is to go to one of these places like cars.com, because you can search and say, show me, instead of just a specific make and model, go to body styles and look at and think rationally. What do you want for you and your family? And assume you're going to buy something 6 months to a year and a half old and you're going to keep it around. And if you aren't going to buy it or keep it, one of your kids or a parent or a relative is going to end up with it, because it's just really hard to get good, clean, used cars now that haven't been through a flood or a accident or something like that. So we kind of looked and decided we wanted to get, first we started with a sedan, and this is for my daughter's car. And when we searched and looked at what kind of sedans do they have and what are they getting for them, and you see a lot of different vehicles, and you'll notice the Toyotas are always highly rated, but they definitely get the premium for them. So if you start looking and think, I'm going to get a really reliable, I'm going to go with the Toyota or the Honda, we've discovered a couple of times now that in certain segments, if you can get, like, here's the Mazda 3, if you can get the Mazda and Nissan in some categories are horrible, some they're great, same for Subaru. If you can afford it and you can find a good deal on a Toyota, Toyota seems to be the highest rated in almost all categories: build, fit, finish, durability, but boy, they do demand a premium. So I encourage you to go to one of these sites, look around at the type of car you think you're going to want, and pick the car, because once you get down there, you're going to be able to say, hey, this is what we're going to get. And what we kind of pinned in on is we liked this Mazda 3. And part of the reason we liked the Mazda 3 is when I did the research using the chatbots, they've been building this car since 18 or 19, and the powertrain in it they have had in the Mazda 6 since 2014, and it's had excellent reviews. It doesn't have a continuously variable transmission. It's got a normal 6-speed automatic, and it doesn't have any turbochargers or crazy stuff, and they're cheap. So I encourage you, decide what you're looking at and pick the car you want, not what some salesman has an incentive to sell you, or you're going to end up with a pile of junk. So first decide what you want. Do you need something that's a big sport ute to haul your family, Ford Explorer, but you also have to pull a trailer? So now maybe you're looking at a Suburban or an Armada. What do you need to have for most of your time driving, and get it narrowed down to the one car you want? Because once you go to the big dealer, there's going to be a ton of them there to see. So once you kind of decide, well, gee, this is the kind of car I want, then get your budget in mind. Here's another thing that you're going to find in the budget that's disappointing. These dealers, now that everything's online, they want to put this price online and get your attention and have the low price. And then even if they don't bait and switch you into a different car, they're going to bait and switch you when you get in by charging a processing fee that they refuse to waive. Some of the typical used car dealers that I have talked to, they will not sell you a car without selling you $1,000 extended warranty, even if it's a low mileage car that still has a manufacturer warranty, and they try to sell interior treatments, ceramic coatings. So when you see the price out on CarMax and think, oh gee, it's $20,200, I can afford that, and then you recognize you're going to have the sales tax and your state title fees and registration and wheel taxes, the costs are going to be driven up so that when you get from that list price, you're going to be paying a quarter more. So that's why you don't want to be doing this very often, and you want to find the right vehicle and get it nailed down. And then you are going to get disappointed because you're going to get to a used car dealer, see this car for $20,200, and with all the tax, title, and licensing and everything out the door, and them forcing you to buy a warranty, forcing you to buy their interior treatment package, forcing you to buy their wax ceramic package, you're going to be out 25, 26 grand on this car. So for me, I wanted to make sure I could go and find the package we wanted. The other thing we wanted to do is we've found that all-wheel drive may improve handling a little bit, but it also reduces fuel economy, increases potential maintenance risk, and definitely increases insurance cost, because if you smash it up, there's more there to fix. So we'd rather get the front-wheel drive than the all-wheel drive. We'd like to get the mid-range package, which has decent riding aluminum wheels and low-profile tires and decent interior, and being in the cold Midwest, heated seats, and hopefully a moonroof for traveling, and those kinds of features, lane keep, adaptive cruise, automatic headlight dimming. So you can get a base model, but if you're already spending $22, $23, $1,000 more for a vehicle that's going to be in your family for probably close to a decade, those kinds of things are worth it. But by the same token, you probably don't want to get stuck paying for turbochargers that are going to go bad and racing wheels with really expensive tires that are going to be expensive to replace, those kinds of things. So you got to pick that midline package. So once you pick the vehicle you want, again, when you go out in these sites that do these car sales, you can zoom it down and say, I want to go to, and in our case here, again, we were looking at the Mazda, and once we get to that, then we can go to the models, and we can go to the Mazda 3, and we can do the search. And it's really worthwhile doing this, but don't just go wandering aimlessly, or you're going to end up with a piece of crap that some salesman is being incentivized to get rid of. Pin down at your kitchen table with the laptop with the family the car that you want and the trim package you want. Because again, once you nail down the model, then you can also go down to the trim package, and you can see again they've got the carbon turbo, which is asking for trouble, the carbon edition, which is a racy one. Their preferred package, you can see that seems to have more inventory, and it's what the rent-a-car companies seem to have. And then you can find a car that hopefully is going to have what you're looking for. And then you can also start looking for getting the mileage level that you're targeting. Now, one thing that we did while we were looking at this is we were looking at the Mazda 3 and talking with some friends and realizing, well, for just about $1,500 more, and here's the danger of price creep. If anybody that's ever built a house or things like that, well, for a couple hundred more of this, a couple hundred more for that, and all of a sudden you've doubled the price. But we did find out that the Mazda CX-30 is built on the same platform as the Mazda 3. I want to get rid of the Mazda 3 here. And it's only about $1,500 to $2,500 more, but it's much higher off the ground, so you're not going to be tearing off your front fascias in the snow or in parking lots. It's a little bit more stable. It's all-wheel drive standard, which wasn't something we were super excited about, but it's definitely something we were willing to work with. And for whatever reason, they're priced reasonably. Also, from a reliability standpoint, this is in the category of like a Toyota RAV4, Honda HR-V, Ford Escape. They've been building this vehicle since 2019 as a 2020 model, and it's had that same Mazda 6 2014 powertrain, and it gets over 30 miles to the gallon on average, and it's been bulletproof and hasn't had issues. So we thought, well, let's take a look at that car. So now here we are looking, and we ended up looking at the CX-30. We did some research and found out what's the new list price on this vehicle, and then beyond that, is there dealer discounts available? But again, the bait and switch, new cars, if you go buy new cars today, over and above the current price, they charge you a destination fee and processing fees at the dealer over and above the list price. So it's not where you used to start from the list price and go down, you go up. And then for the state of Wisconsin, our sales tax, our title fees, this vehicle, if we buy it new, is going to be $34,000. And then I looked around at typical used prices in dealers that I would be looking at and saw what they're pricing them at, and found out right on the phone, do you require me to buy a warranty from you, and things like that. Some didn't require the warranty, but the one that they had on the floor already had a ceramic wax coating, so that was going to be added on, things like that. So we ended up looking at, you'd get about a 20% discount at our local dealers, and you weren't really sure where these cars were coming from, and some of them claimed to have really low miles, but they didn't have an explanation why. And I did some research and found out that the most common place for vehicles to get damaged is in transport to and from dealers and auctions. And sometimes you have new vehicles with just few miles that get damaged, or lemon law returns. That wasn't something we wanted to deal with. So then I looked online, and we started with Avis because they had the most inventory, then Hertz, Enterprise. Interestingly, Enterprise is usually the cheapest place to rent cars from of these big categories that I've gone to, not the fly-by-nighters. And it's because they tend to keep them a little bit longer. So when you go to the Enterprise lot, you're going to see vehicles that may have a 2023 with 60,000 miles, whereas Hertz and Avis, everything you see is going to be a 25, and it's going to have less than 30,000 miles on it. So depending on what you're willing to look at and what you're willing to work with, there's that to consider. For that reason, I kind of put Enterprise last because they kind of had the smorgasbord widest price categories, and I didn't know any of these numbers for the add-on fees. I only saw what was on the websites when I started there. And when I started first at Avis and we were looking, they had a big selection, and this is when we were still looking at the Mazda 3s, and they really looked like a great price. And you could go in and you could click down on the payments, you could click on the features so that you knew you were getting the midline, and those kinds of things. But what they didn't have is that they didn't tell you what those add-on fees were. And again, Avis's add-on fees that they don't tell you until you're ready to make the deal, a dock fee of $8.99, and it had an optional paint and fabric protection of $7.99. So all of a sudden they want $1,700, $1,600 more for something that you don't get to know about until you're right there ready to buy the car. So that really put me off on Avis. Make sure you decide the type of car you want, make sure you know what your budget is, and then make sure that you decide how you can get the most car for your money buying something 6 months to a year and a half to 2 years old, and that you can research the history on it, reduce your risk of getting burned by somebody else's junk, and then go out there and look. And then again, when you're picking on those vehicles, use the new chat bots. Check with ChatGPT and Claude and find out, because I deliberately searched, show me small sport SUVs that don't have turbochargers, aren't hybrids. Right now, gas is really cheap. I don't want the complexity that's going to break down. And show me ones that have had the same drivetrain for at least 5 years. Boom, 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 boom. It gives you the list. So for me, whole different video, but if you're really tight for cash but you need ultimate reliability, I'd go buy a base Kia Soul right now from one of the rent-a-car companies. For that mid-size sedan, I'd go buy a Mazda 3. For that small SUV, I'd go with that Mazda CX-30 we got. For a full-size luxury sedan, if you're doing that for work, I would say that the Hyundai Genesis is really much more car than even some of the German cars when we were, because I was there, so I was driving cars. And if you're going to buy a large sport ute, if you don't have to pull a trailer, I think the Ford Explorer is your answer. If you're going to buy a large sport ute, but you do have to pull a boat or a camper, most of them really have car drivetrains now. The only one that I'm aware of that still has a regular transfer case with two-wheel high, two-wheel low, I'm sorry, two-wheel high, four-wheel low, is actually the Nissan Armada with the 5.6 liter. It's a beast, and it's cheap if you buy it used. So again, do the research, find the right vehicle for you in the right category, and don't let somebody switch you to some piece of junk. The horror stories you can hear, whether it be at the level of the Jeep Wagoneer or some of the General Motors with glitchy electronics, or some of the Fords with the bad transmissions or turbochargers, don't buy the junk they're pushing. So I want to stick with that a little bit. But then when you get back out there and you do the search, again, you can go out and you can filter to the make, the model, the year, the trim level. You can even go down and say there's specific drivetrains. I want to have you can go front wheel drive, all wheel drive. Some of them, when you go to the transmission, if there's a manual available, it'll show. You can go to features and say, I am not going to buy another car without Apple CarPlay, or I am definitely not buying it unless it's got heated seats, whatever that might be. And all three of them have a very similar website. Once you find your way around one of them, you've pretty much got the ability to find your way around the other ones. And then you can go over to the edge over here and go on sort by either mileage low or price low. I actually switching to mileage low, looking for the ones that didn't have more than 30 or 40,000 miles. When people are renting cars in Orlando, they're going back and forth to the coast and they rack up miles fast, so these things get a lot of miles on them. I'm being redundant here, but it's super important. Find out the right style and type of car for you. Find out what your budget is. If you can afford the Toyota in that category, go get it. If you can't, find the Subaru or the Nissan or the Mazda or the right other brand that doesn't get that credence or recognition but is as bulletproof, and search for that vehicle. Make sure you get the right decision on option content. Now the caveat to that is where you're going to buy from. So if you decide I definitely want, and in pickup truck categories, I definitely want a Ford F-150 with the 5-liter V8, and that's the only thing I'm going to take. Well, newsflash is the best place to buy a car from is if you have a friend or a relative who's a private seller, who they get a new company car every 2 or 3 years, and they're looking for family members to get rid of the old one too, and their personal reputation is more important to them than a couple $100 not telling you about the problems. Well, then maybe you're going to buy that GMC pickup from your uncle that works for the sewer and water department and gets to buy his company truck every 3 years. So the first caveat is, if you can find a car from somebody like that, that's the first best choice. But if you're going to go to the rental car companies, I think they're the second choice, because again, people rent a car in Las Vegas and they are going to the Grand Canyon or they're going to Zion. Those cars are going to get a couple thousand miles a week, and the car companies just have to get rid of the things. They aren't trying to make a living off of getting rid of cars. They're making a living off of renting cars, and they've got to find a low-cost way to get rid of them. I think it's going to give you the best selection, the best choice, the best deal. So with that being said, be careful what you're buying and where from a rental car company. I did do some research about where people had complaints. If you're buying out of Las Vegas or Nashville, or the bachelorette party thing, or the spring break deal in Fort Lauderdale, you might end up with a car that smells like vomit and burnt tire rubber. But if you're going to a place like Phoenix or Orlando or Portland, you're more than likely going to get something that's been driven around by families or business travelers, not abused, lots of miles racked up in a hurry, and ready to go. The other thing with that I did definitely get talking to the sales folks at these dealerships is that if you have a new car, and a lot of us have been through this, where all of a sudden the power seat doesn't work properly, and this dealership jerks us around for a couple months till they get it fixed. If somebody's renting that, they're not going to pay the full rental price for something where one of the options isn't working. The rental car companies, if they have a vehicle that's a problem, they either needed to get it fixed right away or get it gone. So if the display is glitching or some feature isn't working properly, it's gone, it's out of there, and it's gone to the auction lot. And they do send a lot of them to the auction lot. But then there's the ones that they keep themselves to get rid of. And that's where I think if you buy the right vehicle from the right place. So no, don't go out buy a Mustang at a Vegas location or some kind of fast sedan in Fort Lauderdale. But I think if you go to Phoenix or Orlando or one of those cities and pick the right kind of vehicle that was a business traveler, a family traveler, go to the rental car companies. As a last resort on a newer vehicle, go to a new car dealer. Keep in mind, new car dealers have to make a living selling cars, and those cars are going to depreciate a quarter to a third in the first year. So it's expensive. But if you're going to buy it and keep it for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, maybe that's worth it. But if you do it, make darn sure you know exactly what you want, and do not let them sell you extended warranties or trimming packages and all this other stuff, and be pushy about not paying those processing fees, but they all seem to be stuck with them now. At this point in the world, I wouldn't go to a used car dealer where I am or a Facebook flipper, not even as a last resort. Every time I've looked at a vehicle that somebody said, hey, can you come look at this car with me? And I get there and the warranty is, I'm sorry, the title work is sketchy. You find the body work on it. I've crawled underneath a couple of them where you can see where they stretched out the body and title's clean, but clearly somebody did a ton of body work on them. I wouldn't go there. So that's where I ended up with this. Now, the other issue is that if you don't live in a major metro area, I do want to talk about Hertz, because once you pick your vehicle, you can pick and you can screen by SUV, low mileage, and you want a moonroof, and you want gasoline, not hybrid or diesel. They let you do those kinds of things. And I searched here, CX30, and then you can go to distance, and you can even pick state, which states they're in, and you can see the cool thing. They can show you right where they are, and they can see on here that they have 100 of them in Florida, and they have 1 or 2 in most of the other states. So it's like, if you're going to buy this vehicle, guess what? You're going to Florida, because even in Arizona they only have 1. One thing I did notice is some of these manufacturers that import vehicles from Japan but build other vehicles in the States, they build in the southeastern United States. So if it's a vehicle that's typically imported from Japan, you're going to go buy it in Phoenix. If it's something built in the States, you're probably going to go buy it in Florida. The other thing I noticed with Hertz, the other ones have just dealerships internally that they take the vehicles to. But Hertz has something called rent to buy, and then they have the certified dealerships that's available to buy. But for whatever reason, they've got most of their inventory is out there on rent to buy. So in theory, you could go rent a car, buy it, and drive it. But when you go to click on the rent to buy and start to fill in the form, and somebody from Hertz is going to get back a hold of you, you can see the full detail. You get to see the auto check or the Carfax, which is pretty much useless, because unless there's a police report, if they have internal damage and fix it internally, there's no Carfax on it. I did learn that, and that's true for all of them. But once you select for this and start to go and say, I want to look at this car, you're going to get to a Hertz person. They're going to go from the chat to want to talk to you live and convince you, no, come to the dealer and look at what's in stock to buy. Don't do the rent to buy. I don't even know how you could get to the rent to buy, but it wasn't available for me, and I just didn't go there. So that was a factor. Going back to when you do decide what you're getting, we made the trip down, and again, we wanted to know what we were going to get. We made the decision we're going to go get a CX-30, and we made a decision we'd go to Avis first, then we'd go look at Hertz, and then we'd go to Enterprise. Interestingly, red, yellow, green. Remember that. I couldn't believe how accurate this was on the red, yellow, green scale. When we went to Avis, I already showed you that they decided, oh boy, we've got all of these fees that we aren't going to tell you about right until the very end. But in addition to not telling you about them, they also played a little bit of a game in that, oh gee, if you try to finance this or send us a wire, we can't let you have the car until the wire clears, and that might take 2 days. Why don't you just wire a little bit less than the amount, we can put the rest on a credit card. Well, if I had wired them what I thought was going to be the right amount, come back the next day, I would be stuck with all of these fees with no clue what to do. Do not, do not send any money until you have your final paperwork in front of you and you know exactly what it's going to look like, and you take care of your state registration fee and title fee. For me, some states apparently they can just right there in Florida get you registered to your state with your plates and your title. In a lot of states like mine and Wisconsin, the new car dealers have worked with the politicians. If the dealer isn't physically in Wisconsin, they can't do Wisconsin title work. But when I bought the car, they do have to charge you sales tax, because if they don't charge sales tax, somebody's going to come back to them, probably the state of Florida, and make them pay sales tax even if they didn't collect it from you. So I did the deal where I bought it, got a bill of sale, had a signed off title mailed to me, and paid my home state Wisconsin sales tax to Enterprise. Then when I got back to Wisconsin and went to the DOT, I had a slip from Enterprise saying they paid Wisconsin sales tax, here's the bill of sale. They didn't pay anything else, so I didn't have to pay double sales tax. Be careful so you don't end up paying sales tax in 2 states, because sales tax is not cheap. So just be aware of that. The other thing that you need to be aware of is they are going to push extended warranties, these fabric and paint packages, and these dock fees aren't published anywhere that I could find. I can't prove it, but I'd be willing to bet that if you show up and rent a car by yourself, like I did, and say, hey, the family's already at the beach and I'm just killing time, that fee is one thing. If you Ubered from the airport and you're there with the wife or the husband and the family and the kids are crying and you're trying to make the deal, I can only imagine what they would have tried to get away with for this document fee. So make sure you don't cheap out. Make sure you get a hotel room for the first night in town, no matter where you're going down on vacation there, and make sure that you have a rent-a-car and be prepared to drive around for a couple of days, because otherwise they're going to convince you this is the car for you, it's all set, look, it's got a clean Carfax, go take it for a test drive, gee, wire the amount that we think it is, and then if there's extra, we'll let you put that on a credit card, and then we'll get the paperwork figured out. Don't fall for it. Don't do it. When I went down, the other thing I did is I went and hunted, and again, I built my little spreadsheet here, and I went down, and before I did, I contacted all these folks over the web, and I have individual salespeople that I have in my phone that I talked to at these 3 places. I emailed with. They knew I was coming. They knew which cars I was going to look at. And I fully expected they'd bait and switch and say, oh, that car you really wanted is sold, but now let me go send you this other make and model pile of garbage here with a bunch of warranty recalls and problems. And when I landed in Orlando, the first thing I did when I landed on the tarmac and we could take our phones out of airplane mode is I called the guy at Avis, told him, I just landed, I'll be there in about an hour. I called the woman at Hertz and said, just landed, I'll be there in about 2 hours. Called the guy at Enterprise and said, I just landed, it's going to take me a while, take care of the family, I'll be there in about 3 hours. I didn't say I'm going to the other places first, I don't want to intimidate, I just spaced it, but I made it all aware. These are the vehicles I want to see, this is what I'm looking at, be prepared. When I got to Avis, I'm glad I went there first because they knew the vehicles I wanted to see. They did nothing. For all the chat he did with me on the phone, they didn't pull any of the vehicles out. Nothing was ready. Had to screw around. They wanted me to wait to be committed to them so that I had this commitment and would then buy. And then when they did pull the car out, it was disappointing because we went for a ride and found out it's okay and it's got a clean Carfax. But then when I did the look in the parking lot, see this red overspray from when they did the body work on it, and see these scrapes? This isn't just dirt, these are actual scrapes. So this vehicle was in the body shop, was damaged, and the front tires were a different brand than the rear tires, and it had a clean Carfax. That had me pretty irked, but I just moved ahead and said, well, give me your number. And they tried to get me to do the wire, and then I wanted to have that number so I could take it with me to have like a set to say, okay, now I know where Avis is at. Let me find out where Hertz is going to be, because I had this number for the Mazda 3 from Avis. So that was kind of my benchmark to build off of, kind of thing. So from there, I went over to Hertz. Hertz was a much better experience. The lady I worked with at Hertz, I would recommend in a second. She was great. When I asked about, gee, in addition to the price on the vehicle, what other fees do you have that we're going to have to deal with? And she made no bones about it, and she got this document for me that showed me, that their fee is $9.99. So they're going to charge you $1,000 more than what they put on the website. You don't know about it till you're there, and that you can only have a cashier's check, or if you're going to do a wire, you're going to have to wait for it. I sadly work with a national bank that doesn't have local branches, so I couldn't go and get a wire. I said, okay, great. I like the car that we looked at. We test drove it. But then when I came back, because of what I'd seen at Avis, even though I had the clean Carfax, I had the clean detail, I was disappointed because I found this. And you can see that the body doesn't line up. And then when I reached around and looked inside, again, I could see paint overspray and zip ties where the bolt mechanisms or the clips were supposed to be. So this vehicle had been in some kind of a fender bender, no documentation. This is where Enterprise really stands out. If you go to Avis or Hertz, the only thing you can see is the Carfax, and that's only going to happen if there was an accident report. Everything else is blind. They can't even tell you if the oil was changed or when. When you go to Enterprise, they can pull up on screen and show you every time that vehicle was rented, if they had to do extra cleaning in the car, if they rotated the tires, everything, every oil change, everything Enterprise does with that car, they can pull it up for you and they can print screen it for you. So everything that the Enterprise cars are through, you can see as long as you have the salesperson willing to show it to you. That in and of itself, in my mind, makes it worth it just to go to Enterprise, just because you can see what's there. I think part of the reason Enterprise might do that is, again, they keep them in the fleet longer, so they've got them not just at 15 to 30,000 miles, they've got them 15 to 60,000 miles, bigger variety. And if you're buying something, a 23 with 60,000 miles, you probably want to see that detail more, and that's why they're providing it. So that was great. The other thing that I got from Enterprise is the guy I dealt with on the phone was great, was very prepared, but the disappointment was Enterprise actually has a location in Sanford, Florida, and in Orlando. So it'd be like being on the north and south end of Los Angeles or Chicago. You're an hour apart from each other. And the car that I decided I wanted to see was at the other Orlando location. I'm talking to him on the phone thinking I'm going to see him, and I ended up at the other location looking at a car, talking to somebody else, and they kind of said, yeah, here's your guy, and they want to be respectful of each other. They physically drove that car to the other location. The next morning we went. The car I bought was there. Enterprise did a great job of, when I said I don't need an extended warranty, I got somebody else that can do that, and the salesman pointed out, You don't need it because it doesn't anything but do beyond the manufacturer warranty, which is good, till 60,000. No pressure on those kinds of things. Their transaction fee over and above the list price was $403. That's it. When I was going through my checklist of things that I'll put down below in the video, no bait and switch of, oh, this car is gone, you can't find it. None of the, oh, you really should buy this extra processing fee. And it was very clear. The one thing I would encourage is you're going to be busy, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to be excited. Have a checklist of things to run through to make sure. Did you check and see all of that history, especially at Enterprise where they let you see the history? Does it make sense? Does it have all the oil changes? Was it out of the rental fleet for a month or a month and a half? Can they tell you why? That kind of thing. And take the time, go through it. They're willing to do it. Get it done. Then when you're ready to do the payment, I did the wire. They checked, made sure they got it. They had me ready to go in an hour. One thing, the sales guy again was great down there. Ishmael was like, hey, does it have everything? And I was like, hey, this one doesn't have floor mats. They went and pulled floor mats out of a different vehicle for me because I was smart enough to ask about floor mats. I'm sure if the owner's manual would have been missing or something like that, they would have taken care of that. So make sure you remember to check for floor mats. If there's a rear cargo cover that should be there. If somebody took it out of the car that you're buying, buy that car, but make them give you the mats out of the other one. They don't care. They want to get you satisfied and happy and go. Get your wire done, get your payment transferred, and make sure they give you a receipt showing that you purchased it and that you paid sales tax to your home state and that you're ready to go to the DOT. Then when I got back home, I had that paperwork and they mailed the clear title to me. Went into the DOT. I was in and out right away because the paperwork was there. If I would have been trying to explain why I'm not paying sales tax, I don't think it would have gone so well. But because I had those documents from Enterprise all set, it worked out flawlessly. The other thing that really worked out great, that was lucky, and again, this was my experience in Florida, Orlando, January 2026. If you try to do this, I don't know, in Las Vegas somewhere or something, in July, maybe you're going to decide Enterprise is horrible and Avis is great. Maybe it's just the folks I dealt with that happened to be assigned to me. But for me, Avis was red. Hertz, I had a beautiful experience with a wonderful lady that was trying to find the right car for me. They just didn't have the right car there. So I would not be scared to go back to Hertz. I am curious about that rent to buy at Hertz and why it's even on the website if nobody wants to sell it to you. But the Hertz team and facility looked absolutely solid to me. Enterprise was better for us because again, they have that wider range of years and miles, and more importantly, Enterprise is willing to show you the full detail on screen of the car. And then the real lucky thing that worked for us is the vehicle I rented from Enterprise. And I said, hey, I got to get this vehicle back to the airport. Can I buy somebody lunch or something? Like, don't worry. We'll check it in here and we'll sell it here. And they checked in the vehicle I rented. I only got charged for the day, one day I had the car, or 2 days I had the car. So that worked out beautifully. So that was great. So I'm trying to think what I've got here. Make sure you have absolute certainty. This is the car I want. You are not going to sell me that other crappy vehicle from a different brand that has all kinds of electronics or transmission glitches or turbocharger problems. This is the car I want. This is the model. This is the trim level. They will find you one. They will take it out of the rental fleet if they know that's what they need to do to make you a customer. Then once you've got that vehicle picked out, make sure you search that vehicle over to make sure you don't buy something like this and not know about it. And make sure that you know what the fee structure is, and then once you wire it over, you'll know where you're at. When that's all said and done, for us, again, if we would have bought the car new, it would have been about $34,000, my estimation. If I would have bought a typical local used, I would have paid about $27,000. Enterprise, I paid about 24 and a half. Now, keep in mind, I did pay hotel room, rent a car, flight down. So I spent about $400 extra to be there. And then we had to drive home because we're taking this thing home with us. Bought fuel, oil change, and spent another hotel room because it's a long drive to the Great Lakes from Orlando. And if you're going to hate the idea of making that trip, don't do it. But if you're looking for a way to get out of, when I left Wisconsin, it was below zero for several days. When I got to Florida, this is what I saw. It was beautiful. And we got to spend a little bit of time down there, drive through the Smoky Mountains. And frankly, I hope to do this more in the future with more relatives. I have every plan of contacting Ishmael at Sanford Enterprise when I do this. I'm not getting comped in any way to say that, but that's who I worked with and that's how we got this. And I would do it again in a second. So I hope this helps. And if anybody's aware of something I missed or had absolutely wrong, put it in the comments. I'll try to update this, keep it current. But if you're buying a car, buy as new as you can so you don't have to go through this agony, because the professionals are there to fleece you, and they will. They're there to make a living, not to get you the great deal. And they're going to make a living. So do it as little as you can, buy as new as you can, buy the right vehicle for you. Once you find that right vehicle size and model, make sure you buy the right brand and model. That Ford that we just passed on the video, if you buy an F-150 with a 5-liter Coyote, that's a great truck. If you buy that same truck in certain years with the 3.5 turbo, piece of garbage. So you really have to do the research to find the right vehicle for you in the right model year. Because again, that 5-liter F-150, you can tell I've bought a lot of F-150s over the last couple of years. Certain years they burned oil, other years bulletproof to 300,000 miles. So make sure you know what you're looking at and get to the model, trim level, get to the big rental car fleets. In my estimation would be go to either Portland, go to Orlando, or go to Phoenix. Buy a rent-a-car, get it home. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. Subscribe, share this with anybody that can use it.